can probably go ahead and get started.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
So thanks everybody for coming tonight. And I hope everybody has their chilled glasses ready and all their cheeses. We're really honored again to, just like last fall, have Miguel, who is the founder of, correct? Am I correct in that? Founder of New England Cider?
Yeah, that's right.
To give us a little virtual tasting along with cheese pairings. So I'm going to turn it over to Miguel. And just one thing to note, as your questions pop up, you can just throw them in the chat and we will pause between each cider and go over your questions. So turning it over.
Hi, how's everyone doing? My name is Miguel Galarraga and I'm the owner of New England Cider Company. Just really quick before we get started, I'll just ask if everyone can just hold off from tasting their drinks and their cheeses until we kind of go through a little explanation of everything. So I'll kind of walk you through the pairings, the ciders. I've put together a little cheese plate for myself. I've got some cheese and crackers for myself as well here. I'll explain a couple of things on how to do the pairings, and it'll apply to almost any kind of pairing that you do, whether it's beer, wine, cider, anything along those lines. So kind of a helpful hint for any part of food or beverage. And then we'll kind of go through a little bit of a tour in our shop, and I'll show you guys how we make our production. So we'll just dive right in. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I started doing hard cider about almost 10 years ago now. It's just kind of crazy. It was kind of a means to get out of my old job and my old career. I was a mechanic for about 15 years, almost 16 years. And I got tired of doing that. And we started making beer at home. It was just kind of a for fun homebrew kind of thing. And apple cider just kind of fell into the lap, so to speak. And we thought we could just kind of make booze on the cheap. We knew how to make equipment. We knew how to use tools and stuff like that. So we made our own equipment, and we would go to local orchards and get apples for close to nothing, press them on the weekends and get about like 50 gallons or so of hard cider. It kind of snowballed when we took it to people's houses for holidays and that kind of thing. And everyone always enjoyed it. It was different. People always tell you, you should really sell this. You should really sell this. So I saw it as an opportunity. No one else in the state was really doing it at the time, while the craft beer market was kind of getting flooded. So I figured, why not give it a shot, and started the business in about late 2012. We started by doing just draft beer only. So we were only doing kegs at the time in bars and restaurants. And we just recently, only about a year and a half ago, started doing our canning line process. So it's been good. It's been a crazy ride ever since 2013. But that's my little brief history of myself and the business. So I'll get right into the ciders now and how to taste them and how to pair them. So what you really want to do whenever you're doing any kind of a pairing with food and beverage, you want to make sure that you just kind of take your time with things. For this pairing, you're going to want a nice glass that has a little bit of a wider opening. This shape is really ideal for hard ciders. If you have pints, that's fine too, but you're really looking for a rounder shape, a shorter glass with a wider opening. It just kind of lets the aromatic expressions come out and hit you in the nose. For this particular pairing, we're going to start off with our fresh blend. So everyone's got their 4-pack, so you don't want to pull that one right off. The reason for that is we always start off with our least aggressive flavors, and then we work our way to the more flavorful or sweeter varieties. In this case, they're all just about on the same sweetness level. So if we were doing something that we have on our board today behind me, it would start off with our dry cider. So we go dry, sweet, spicy, or flavored. And then anything that has any like really aggressive flavors like heat to it, we do an ancho chili one, which would be like the last on the line. So if you're ever confronted with a flight of anything, try to go with the least aggressive, so that your palate doesn't get tired by the time it gets to the final one, and you can really appreciate all the flavors of the more mild things that you might be trying. So Fresh Blend is our flagship cider. This was the very first semi-sweet cider that we ever did. All of our ciders start off with our base cider, which is Viva. It's just this dry cider that we ferment out. There's no residual sugar. And then we take fresh apple juice and we just back sweeten it right back into the fresh blend. So this one's all apples. There's no other added flavors to this one. It's all apple juice, all natural. Go ahead and pop this one. Go ahead and pour yourself a decent amount here. I'm going to do a little bit less, but you know, a little bit higher up. If you're sharing, even if you're not sharing, a little bit higher up here you want to be, so you can get a good smell for it. And the first thing you're going to want to do whenever you're imbibing in a beverage, you want to look at the color and you want to see the clarity. You want to just take a look at it first and see what's going on in the glass. It gives you an idea of what you're expecting, kind of. So is it going to be full body? If it's really crystal clear, you know, you might expect something a little bit lighter. Mine has a little bit of haze in it. Might have a little sediment from the apple juice. And the next thing you're going to want to do is just go ahead and take a smell of it. See what kind of notes you're pulling out of it. I'm getting a little bit of like a hint of honey characteristic on this one. And there's definitely apple aromas coming through on it as well. And then next, you're going to want to go ahead and give it a sip. And as you take your sip, you want to let that beverage just kind of coat the entirety of your mouth, your tongue, and then maybe go in for another one and take another smell of it as you go in. See, maybe you missed something. And after a couple of sips, you also want to exhale through your nose. Your nose and your tongue are connected in that it helps you release more flavors as you exhale through your nose. So those two are connected. So it gives you more aromatic expressions, more flavors as you exhale through your nose. So pretty mild, not overly sweet. It's fairly well balanced, nice acidity on this one. Kind of makes my mouth water a little bit, which is what we're looking for in this cider. We didn't want anything that was overly sweet. We always wanted a nice balance of dry and sweet. So this one kind of hits the mark with that. And it's still to this day our #1 seller. It's our most popular out in the wholesale market and pretty much here in our taste room as well. So for something like this one, I would probably pair it with, I would usually pair it with a blue cheese. You'd be surprised. Most people are very skeptical on blue cheeses. They can be very potent, but the blue cheese and the fresh blend really go well together. I believe we had suggested a brie for this one. Those go really well as well because they just have a lot of, they're full flavor. They have a lot of flavor on this one. So I don't have anything too exotic here today. I have a lot of mild cheeses. So I'm probably going to go with one. It is a goat cheese. It's an apple, goat, and cow. So it's a little bit softer of a cheese. So same concept. You know, you want to, mine is like really crumbly, so it's not really formed. But yeah, same thing. You want to kind of take a peek at it, see what it smells like, pop it in your mouth, really get all the flavors in there. And you want to kind of let it do its thing in your mouth on its own. And then kind of go back and forth with the cider and the cheese. You know, finish your swallow, your bite, see kind of where that leaves you off, and then go back for your cider and see how does it play well with the cheese? Is it offensive? Does it not mix well? You know, some more cider, some more cheese, kind of go back and forth in that fashion. Now, for me, this one pairs really well. There is a decent amount of apple flavor in this cheese. I believe they blended an apple into it or something. And it just really accentuates the apple flavor in this particular cider. So I'm pretty happy with the way that one paired for me. And in between, I'd probably take a bite or two of a cracker, something to just kind of neutralize your mouth a little bit. I've got some plain Crostini crackers. They're fairly neutral flavored, but I've also got some that are a little bit more fun. They got cranberries and seeds in them. But again, if you're doing pairings and you're going in for the flavors of the beverages, try not to overwork your mouth with a lot of different flavors, because your mouth will get tired, and then you won't be able to really tell the difference of anything at that point. Now, any questions on the fresh blend? Is everyone enjoying this one so far? Awesome, very good. Cheers. So when we first started making cider, eight years ago now, we started off with everything dry. All of our ciders were dry. We did not have one even semi-sweet or off-dry cider. And we came into the market with a very, I would say it was a very aggressive dry cider. And we immediately found that the customers wanted something sweeter. They wanted something that tasted like apples. Even though when a fully fermented product is finished and there's no back sweetening to it, typically doesn't really taste like apples. It's similar to wine, where the wine doesn't really taste like grapes. You get a lot of other flavors that come through on wines. Butterscotches, oak, cherries, vanilla, those types of characteristics. And in cider, it's a little bit different. So we were quick to adapt with that. When we opened our tasting room, again, we had all dries on draft. And it was a resounding, give us something sweet, give us something more flavorful. So we've since adapted a different model. I mean, we've been doing this for the last 8 years, and now almost every cider on our board is going to be a semi-sweet cider. We only have one dry cider on draft, which is our base cider, and that one only comes out every once in a while because it's just not that popular. The palate here in this part of the country, in Connecticut specifically, hasn't really adapted to that yet. So, but we're getting there. So now next, I would probably go, so it's kind of a toss up here between the cranberry and the blueberry. The cranberry is fairly tart, so it could be a little overwhelming. It might be a good palate cleanser. So we'll go with the blueberry next. So the blueberry cider was one of the first fruited ciders we ever did. And when we first started making our blueberry cider, we used to use fresh blueberries. We used to go hand pick them. I had a friend that had an orchard and we picked them there. We would go to Lyman orchards and pick blueberries there. It was not only time consuming, it was also very expensive to use fresh fruit, and they were hard to process, and the yield was very, very low. So we weren't getting basically the returns on our investment. It was very labor intensive, and we couldn't put out large enough numbers of this stuff. So then we started using frozen blueberries, which also proved to be difficult as we don't cook anything down. We add everything after fermentation. So every cider that we make, we ferment it out to Viva, to dry base cider, and then we add in flavors afterwards. So that proved to be a problem for us because of loss that we were experiencing. The berries themselves swell up with the cider, and then we would just have a lot of wasted product. There would just be so much liquid that was embedded in these blueberries that were basically just money down the drain, essentially. So we've since switched to a concentrate, and it's a very familiar brand. It's called Wyman's. You'll see them in the grocery store, and it's really, really good. They use really good, high quality fruits, and that's what we use now for the blueberries. So go ahead and pour yourselves a glass here. And then again, another thing to notice, you just check out the color, see what's going on there. You'll notice that none of our ciders are overly carbonated. There's a couple different reasons for that. During our canning, carbonation can be kind of tricky for us, so we try to keep it fairly low. And then the other reason is for tax purposes. So we're not legally allowed to go over a certain limit of what they call volumes of CO2. It's just the amount of CO2 that's in the liquid. So we legally, by federal standards, we can't go over a certain percentage. If we go over a certain percentage, we get taxed at a champagne rate, which ends up being substantially more. I believe it's a few dollars per gallon of tax versus the cider rate, which is only 12 or 15 cents per gallon. So it's substantial. So we keep it low for those two purposes. I particularly like a little bit more carbonation in my cider. So it's kind of a bummer for me, but we have to make choices. So this one I like. It's very quickly after we released it had become our second most popular cider. It's on draft here at our taste room all year round, just like the fresh blend. And it's something that's never going to go away. People literally get mad at us if we take this off draft. So if it's not on our board, something happened and we're going to get emails about it. So go ahead and cheers to this one. Have a nice little smell of this one. So on this one, I pick up a little bit more of a tannic kind of characteristics, almost like a woody characteristic coming through. There is some fruit flavors, some fruit aromas that come through, almost like stone fruit a little bit. And the flavor is just ever so slightly different than the fresh blend. There's a little bit more of an astringency to it, where it dries out my tongue a little bit, and that's just from the blueberry itself. It kind of has that characteristic. But nice and sweet, nice fruity characteristic to it. And that's exactly what we're going for on that one. For this one, I can't remember what I paired it. I think we were gonna do the smoked Gouda, something smoky with this one. So for this one, I do have a bourbon smoked Gouda. Mine's not too flavorful. Now, did anybody else get any cheese to pair? Show of hands. Oh, almost everybody. Awesome. Very good. Nice. Yeah, it's the way to go. Might as well go for the full deal. So a little bit of smokiness on this one for me. Not my favorite Gouda in general. I'm not a big Gouda guy, but anything with a little bit of smoke on it, it's nice. Not much going on there for me in my pairing. I'm not getting any enhancements or any complement from the cider to the cheese. It almost kind of just cleanses my palate and takes away any of that smoky, cheesy characteristic. And feel free to share some of your own comments. Maybe you guys are having a little bit different of experience over there. Yeah, definitely just takes it away. I've got to have a lot of cheese in my mouth to mix it in. And then I start getting some different flavors popping. I've got the cheese on my tongue and the cider in there at the same time, mixing it around, kind of get a little bit different of a characteristic. Almost more of the smoke kind of pops out. But then it's gone. As soon as I take another sip, it's out of there. So, okay, I'm going to finish mine up. Okay. I also have a little pickle here for myself, cleanse my palate a little bit. And I just really like pickles. All right, for the next one, let's go ahead and jump right into the cranberry. Same scenario, excuse me, with the cranberry. We started doing this one as just a seasonal for November for Thanksgiving, and it's kind of just stayed that way. Not a huge seller, but it is something that people always look for this time of year. It's fairly well balanced between the tartness of the cranberry, the cider characteristic and a little bit of the sweetness of the fresh apple juice. So there's just those three ingredients in here on this one. We used to use frozen cranberries, actually fresh cranberries, and we moved to frozen cranberries, and now we use cranberry juice, all from the same supplier, the same people. They just make three different products. Same scenarios. The fresh were hard to work with. They didn't stay long, and if we didn't use them right away, they were spoiled. The frozen, same kind of thing. We would get them. They were hard to work with, and then we'd have a lot of loss just because of the liquid and the cranberries, also hard to dispose of. So then we just transitioned to the juice. Same great flavor, just easier to work with. Go ahead and pop yourself one of these. My color on mine's a little bit lighter than the raspberry. I wouldn't say it's crystal clear. I've got a little bit of apple juice sediment in mine, and you can pick up almost like a little bit of a tart aroma to it. There's almost a green apple smell to it. And this one is definitely a lot more tart than the two previous ones. So it's all from the cranberry, and it's on purpose. So this is the characteristic we're looking for on this one. A little bit of tartness to it, but not overly tart. Cranberries can be offensive if there's too much of it, or if there's no sweetness to it. They just completely dry your mouth out, and they're kind of gross. So it was tough to strike a good balance with this one, because you want that cranberry characteristic to come through, but then you don't want it to be aggressive. And then as we were trying to balance the tartness and then adding more apple juice to it, we were losing a lot of the cranberry flavor. So pretty tricky juice and fruit to work with, but always a seasonal favorite. One of my favorite drier fruited ciders that we make. So this one's not exactly on the full dry scale. So if you look at your cans, they all have a little scale at the bottom. The first two are almost all the way on the sweet side, so they're basically semi-sweets. And then this one's almost all the way on the dry side. It's not fully dry. There's more of a perception of dryness, but there is about half the amount of apple juice in this one for back sweetening than there are in the fresh blend or the blueberry. So definitely less sweet than the other two, and purposely so. Drinks like almost like a little bit like a wine. Again, not overly carbonated. It's fairly low on the carbonation, but still very tasty. For this one, I've chosen to pair a cheddar with mine. So I've got I think it's a Gruyere Cheddar. So fairly mild, great aroma to it. It's actually a really tasty cheese. And if you ever want to try these cheeses out, the ones that I'm pairing with these ciders, we have them available here at the tasting room. You can come in and sit down and have a cheese plate. I'm more than happy to sell you a brick of cheese if that's what you're looking for. But that way you can see what we've got going on here. Is this anyone's first time drinking cider? Oh, we got a one. All right, Nina. Oh, okay, and friend. Okay, wow, everyone's pretty experienced. Perfect. I love that. So my cheese and cider pairing, again, not too complimentary in not in a bad way. They just kind of both do their own thing. My cheese is a little bit stronger than my cider. So this one almost has a little bit of like that strong, almost like ammonia characteristic to it that you get in some cheeses. Not offensive by any means, but it definitely outshines the cider for me. But very tasty. Even with a full mouth of cheese, the cider doesn't really have any effect on it. It's kind of muted by the cheese itself, so it doesn't really do too much there. Okay. All right, so far, 2 semi-sweets, semi-dry. We're gonna work our way into our pumpkin cider. This is one of our more popular flavors that we do throughout the year. Definitely our most popular seasonal cider. And this one we only put out between September, and then we end it usually at the end of November. So it's coming up to the end of its seasonality right here. This cider is extremely popular though. In the past, it's done better in sales than blueberry in its short period of run. So even though we only run it for three months or so, it outsells some of our other ciders that are on all year round. It's kind of crazy. Last year was definitely the most that we sold was a pumpkin cider, and in that short period of time, probably a few things people probably cooped up, wanted to get out, and pumpkin stuff was coming around, so it was their first chance to get out and do stuff like that. So, but still a great cider. We started making this one again with fresh pumpkins. The first year I did this, I brought all the pumpkins home and I roasted them at home in my oven, brought them back here, scooped them out, pureed them, and then tried pressing the pumpkins. If you've ever worked with fresh pumpkins or even canned pumpkins, the way we used to press things here was with, basically it looks like burlap, but it's woven polypropylene. And there's not a lot of liquid in pumpkin puree. So a lot of it was just kind of just slipping and sliding. It was just kind of squeezing around, and there was no liquid actually coming out. So it was frustrating and not very fruitful, but it was an experience. And we still had it ended up turning out really, really good. And only about 40 or 50 gallons that we got out of that. There wasn't a ton of product for the amount of labor. The next year I switched over to borrowing a pizza place's kitchen to roast fresh pumpkins and sweet potatoes. So in between their like lunch rush, I'm throwing sheet pans of sweet potatoes and pumpkins into their ovens, and they were gracious enough to let me do that. Same scenario, brought it back here, scooped them out, tried pressing them. It was just awful. But we ended up with a little bit more that year. And then the following year, we finally I just decided to start using pumpkin puree. We just used pumpkin puree and a pumpkin spice for this one. And again, just trying to strike a nice balance between all the flavors, really giving it a real squash flavor, that real pumpkin flavor, instead of just using artificial flavors. And all the spices are they're ground spices, so they're not artificial flavors. They're not flavorings. Go ahead and pour myself a nice glass here. Again, fairly clear, similar to the fresh blend. Slightly less sweet than the fresh blend. Right on the nose, pick up clove, hint of cinnamon. And I do pick up the base cider. I pick up just a regular cider aroma on this one. Very nice, not offensive, not overly powerful on the spices, which is exactly what we're going for. We wanted something right in the middle that you can drink and go back for another one and maybe even a third or a fourth. And you're just not getting tired of the spice flavor, and the spices aren't just burning out your palate. I think last year I drank like so much of this. I was just surprised because I didn't think I was going to like a pumpkin cider, a pumpkin spice cider. But it really shines. And not overly sweet. It's fairly neutral on the sweetness scale, and it's just fairly well balanced. All right, for this one, I've chosen for myself, I believe this is a spicy Sriracha cheese. You can see the little red specks in there. So mine's going to be fairly spicy. I'm hoping that it works well with the spice of the cider. Well, we'll see. This cheese actually has a really good balance of the spice and the heat level. It's not too hot. It's not making me run from my cider. It's not making me want to take a swig of anything to cool my mouth out, which is nice. And that's very interesting. There's an interesting dynamic between these two. The cider almost kind of flushes out more of those heat notes to it. And then right as I swallow, I get a nice amount of the spices from the cider. So they balance themselves out really well. And these play together really nicely. I'm really happy with this pairing, how well it worked. Very good. Someone came up in the chat. Is that a question?
No, it was just me expressing my jealousy.
Oh. I'm really pleased with this pairing. That these two, this cheese and the cider, play really well together, and they complement each other really nicely. They have a little back and forth dance in my mouth right now. It's really nice. Very good. Now, any questions about any of the four ciders?
Do you want to let people unmute? Oh,
Sure, that's fine. Absolutely.
we have a question in the chat though. Who designs the can art? I love the style.
A young lady by the name of Catherine Manning. She worked for me for about a year, and she was offered a position at Two Roads, and she works on their marketing team now at Two Roads. She still does our artwork on the cans, and we're in the middle of actually redesigning the fresh blend can and coming up with some other artwork for our base cider for our Viva. She's working on that, and she's also working on a basic, really basic logo for us, almost like an icon for us. So yeah, she did all the artwork, and yeah, amazing job. You know, before she came along, we didn't have cans, and I had no idea what I wanted to do for label and anything like that. I just knew I wanted something simple, something clean. I think the pumpkin is the perfect representation of that. She rebranded us as well. When I bought the company out at the beginning of the pandemic, I wanted to do a brand update. And if you guys remember, if anyone's seen our old branding, it was an apple press, and people would always confuse it for a electric chair. You can find it online if you just Google search us at the New England Cider Company. The icon comes up, and it does. It looks like an electric chair at a distance. So I wanted something that people could not confuse with anything else but New England Cider Company, and I wanted artwork that stood out and represented what was in the can. And I think she just nailed it with every single one of our designs. The fresh blend, you're going to drink an apple product. With the blueberry, same thing, cranberry. And we've got some other fun artwork that she's done. She's done Purple Rain, and that one's got the likeness of Prince on there. So really, really talented young lady. She's the one that does our artwork for us.
Awesome. Michelle asked in the chat, are there any other flavors you sell?
Yeah, so we've done, in our portfolio, we have probably over 20 different ciders. And we've cut that down by quite a bit to just about a dozen or so. We probably did over 20. But now we have a little bit more brand focus and a little bit more of a direction of where we're going. So we have more seasonal things. We do fruited series, blueberry, we've got pineapple, strawberry, passion fruit. We just added guava to the lineup, which has been really popular. We've got, those are on right now. Even freshman pumpkin, blueberry, cranberry, strawberries on right now. That's almost all. We do the Purple Rain is cranberry ginger. I'm trying to think what else we've got that we put out. Oh, we're going to be putting out our spiced cider very soon as well. So that one's a little bit more, definitely more spice forward than the pumpkin. And I'm probably forgetting something, but we might have like one or two more.
Do you distribute in other states or only Connecticut?
So we're only distributing in Connecticut right now. We're a fairly small brand in the realm of things, and especially in the alcohol business. So we're not even big enough yet to fill all the accounts that we have in the state. So, but we will be expanding. We're actually going through, I'll take you guys to the shop in a minute and kind of show you what we're going through right now, but we will be distributing to other states in the future. How many different flavors do you can? How many flavors do we can? Fresh blend, blueberry, cranberry, pumpkin, strawberry, pineapple, passion fruit, spiced. Oh, the beets. We do a beet cider. 9, Purple Rain 10. I think we do 10 in can. 10 in can. Are there other seasonal ciders? Yes. So the fruited ones mostly go out to the wholesalers in spring to summertime. Spiced is a seasonal. The beet that's coming up, that's like super limited. It only goes here. It doesn't go out into the market. Fruited ones for the summertime. And then we do have, I launched a different line of ciders late spring or late summer. It's called Brighter Cider, and there's 3 varieties on those. They're just a lower alcohol content, and that is mango, lemon, and grapefruit we did for those. And those are artificially flavored. It was kind of our answer to a seltzer, but without being a seltzer, because we can't make seltzers. So it's all apple based, but we do use artificial flavorings for those. Those kind of fun, weird flavors like that. We can't add those real flavors to our cider. They would inhibit the growth of Acetobacter, which is the precursor for vinegar. So we have to use artificial flavors for those kind of things. So those are those seasonal ones. Will we make the Tequila Sunrise or your ice cider again? So the Tequila Sunrise, maybe. That one was something that we did with just we had cider aged in tequila barrels, and as of a year and a half ago, I kind of disbanded the barrel aging program. It just wasn't feasible. We were investing a lot of money in barrels, and again, not seeing a return. It was actually just cider hanging around in barrels, and nothing ever came of it. People didn't want to really drink it. They weren't crazy about it. We just kind of sit around, so it wasn't really worth it. Once we get things rolling here after the expansion, we'll probably start doing some more barrel aging and potentially do the Tequila Sunrise again. The ice cider, I do plan on doing again. I typically only do it once a year. It's a fairly big process. I have to freeze juice, which is kind of difficult in natural conditions outside. It doesn't really get cold enough to do it here. I don't have a walk-in cooler, so I end up shipping my juice to a neighbor. Essentially, they're another business down the road, and they let me freeze my juice in their walk-in freezer. Again, but it's, you know, I don't want to take advantage of anybody. It takes over a week. It takes like two weeks, almost 3 weeks to freeze it. And then I have to thaw it out basically to get the concentrate out. And then I have a ton of loss, and it's a fairly expensive project to do. It does sell well, and I do enjoy doing it. It's one of my favorite ciders to make. It's one of my favorite ciders to drink. It's just a tough process without having my own walk-in freezer. So, but I will be doing it again. Purple Rain flavor was my favorite. Oh, great. Awesome. The Purple Rain one took off really, really well. It's kind of interesting because people didn't really care for our ginger cider, but they love the blueberry ginger. I prefer just a straight ginger, but you know, we're here to please the customers, not just myself. We'll be making that's Phil is somebody that likes just the regular ginger cider. So, you know, maybe I wanted to do it again. Again, it wasn't a big seller. It was a lot of folks would just come in, see ginger, and then just not even want to try it. They would try it, and they said it was not really for them. But we've been saving those things to do like really, really super small batches of, because there are folks that do want to see that stuff. Even the beets for this year, I didn't want to do them. It's not a huge seller. It's a ton of work. It's one of the only ones that we still use fresh produce for. And I don't really like it. I don't think it's great, but some people really love it. They go like head over heels for it. They think it's amazing. So I've got beets in the cooler, and we're going to be processing this week. So we got to do what the people ask for. So how do you sell them? Are they in 4-packs or 6-packs? So they're all in 4-packs right now. 16-ounce can 4-packs at the package store. Here at the tasting room, you can get them in a growler, 64-ounce or 32-ounce. Either one. And then we've got 4-packs of fresh blend, cranberry, pumpkin, and blueberry at this moment right now. You can provide an overview of your expansion. Yes, I will be taking everyone on a tour in a moment. Feel free to grab a drink and come with me. I think I'm going to go for the cranberry. Is there any? And then I won't read the comments while I'm doing the tour, but you guys can go ahead and close this one. You guys can go ahead and put your comments in the chat. And if Leah, if there's a bunch of them, or if there's questions along the way, feel free to just jump in and interrupt me. Sure. No problem with that. So if anyone been here, or most people have been here to the tasting room, we've got
I see thumbs up.
So show of hands, two folks. Okay, cool. Great, awesome, perfect. All right, so most of you, the 3 people that have been here, this is our tasting room. So it's fairly small. It's only about 300 square feet. That's the bar right behind me, our tasting board. There's seating inside, limited seating right at this point, but we will be adding some more tables and moving some stuff around as the wintertime comes. I did say we don't have barrels aging. These are just some decorative barrels that we have right now. And then our little merchandise area over here. So go into the tasting room, or out of the tasting room, we'll go into the production area. So the way we do things now, so I'll rewind to 8 years ago when we were down the road at 226 North Plains Industrial Road. It's currently occupied by Front Porch Brewing. That was our first location. When we were there, we were pressing all of our apples. 100% of our apples were getting pressed in-house by us. Our first year, we did about 1,000 gallons of juice, and just gonna turn off my Glycol Chiller so it's not whirring away here. Excuse me for 1 second. Okay. There we were pressing all of our stuff in-house, and first year about 1,000 gallons, second year about 3,000 gallons, and the third year we're getting close to 5,000 gallons. And we quickly realized at that time, like, it just was not feasible to be pressing all those apples on the equipment that we had. We would either have to make a large investment in larger equipment, or we would start outsourcing our juice production. So that's what we started doing, was supplementing our juice production. And we were purchasing juice from a company called England Apple Products. You might have heard of them back in the day. They used to be called the Very Fine Company. So they've since changed names, and now they're New England Apple Products. We were buying our juice, and it would come in, I don't have any bins in here right now, but it would come in like plastic tanks like this, except they're square, 4x4x4. So essentially a pallet, a cube, and we were getting juice supplements with that. We started our operation with these small tanks. You can see how they're fairly small. They're only that big. They don't even come up to my shoulder. 75 gallon tanks. We had 8 of those, and we had some 200-gallon tanks, all HDPE, no temperature controls or anything like that. And we're just relying on our ambient air to keep the temperature. So once we moved out of 226 North Plains, we continued to press, and we reached about 10,000 gallons a year. And we can no longer keep up with crushing apples, cleaning machinery. Basically, it was around the clock. We'd be crushing apples all day for like 3 days a week or 4 days a week, just to make ends meet with juice production. We just decided to go full juice purchased, and that's what we do now. We use 2 companies, the New England Apple Products and Box Mill, and they either send it to us in the totes or in a tanker truck. And we now have fermentation tanks that are behind me. They look small, but they're about 1,600 gallons. They're fairly tall. They're about 12, 13 feet tall. So fairly big tanks. So our juice comes in, it comes pasteurized, and then we add sulfites to it, which just help kill any foreign bacteria that we don't want in there. It just helps passivate it so we don't get any wild fermentations or uncontrolled fermentations. So we get that juice, we pump it into one of our big tanks over here. Let's say we pump it into this one right here. And once it's in there, that's when we add the sulfites and we add enzymes. The enzymes help us with pectin. So if anyone's ever made jam or jelly or anything like that, you add pectin to make your jam or jelly coagulate and get firm. So we want the opposite of that. We want it to not be firm and to not be gummy. We want our juice to be nice and clear and easy to work with. So once it's in there and it's got the sulfites and the enzymes in there, it'll sit for almost 4 days to warm up. The juice comes in at about 40 degrees. So it takes a little bit of time, and it's got to get up to temperature so that we can add yeast to it. If we're going to add our yeast at those colder temperatures, it would struggle. It would have a hard time trying to ferment. It wouldn't metabolize the sugar that was in the juice, and it would start to basically die and give us off odors. It may ferment, but it probably would be pretty bad. We've had bad fermentations because of that. Too hot of a temperature causes the same problem. Too cold, same problem. So we have no choice at this point. We have to wait for the juice to warm up. It's at 4 days, and we pitch our yeast in with some rehydration nutrients, which consist of some vitamins and nitrogen. It helps to protect the cell wall of the yeast and make it viable for fermentation. Once fermentation starts, it takes about 5 days roughly to finish from being juice to being a fermented product. And once we ferment it out, we move it from that tank to this tank. So we just transfer it over. And that's after we've cooled it off a little bit. So we run our fermentations around 65 degrees. Unless we're in a hurry, we'll bring the temperature up. But before we transfer, we have to cool it back down to make sure everything's kind of dormant. So we'll do that, pump it over into the next tank. That's this one, second tank. And we'll add a clay to it, which is called bentonite. The bentonite just attracts any leftover yeast and pulls it right down to the bottom of the tank. So now we have a more clear product. It's not crystal clear, by any means. And there's still yeast floating around in there, but now it's kind of compacted down and it's even more workable. So once we've added that, it takes about 3 to 5 days for it to be ready to go through our filters. And let's see if I can show you guys my filters. These are our filters right here. They're called plate and frame filters. And I apologize for the noise. My chilling unit right there is pretty loud. They both do the same exact thing. One is just more than twice the size of the other one. So with this small one, we could process about 500 gallons on the high side. And then with the big one, we could do a full tank, a full 1,600 gallons through this one in a little bit less than a day. And the way that these work, try to angle my computer down a little bit so I can show you guys. The way that they work is that they have these plates. You can see the plate. And the filters, believe it or not, are the same size of these plates. So they're about this big. And they're just sheets that are squares. And each one of those filter sheets goes in between one of these plates. So there's 25 plates from here to here, and there's 25 plates from here to here. Each section is meant for a different porosity of filter. So I can go from a coarse filter into a fine filter in one pass. So I can do 2 stages of filtration with one unit in one shot. That cuts down my turnaround time from what used to be almost 2 months of waiting for yeast and everything to settle out to a day. So those filters have been like a blessing. Like I said, it used to take us 2 months to have a clear finished product, and we would have to move cider around like crazy. So we would go from I can see myself here. Here's my tank. We would go from this tank to this tank in the past, and then go back over here to get it off the yeast again, because the yeast keeps settling out every time you move it. And then back to this one, then maybe back to this one more time. So we were just constantly moving cider. And every time we move cider, you lose volume, you lose product. So with the filters, we still lose a little bit of product because that's the nature of the beast, but our efficiencies are higher and our turnaround times are higher. So once we have a finished filtered product, that's when we do our blending. That's when we add juice back to it to make fresh blend. That's when we add the concentrate back to it to make blueberry. And all that gets done in this little guy right here. It's a smaller tank, it's about 250 gallons or so. This is what they call a bright tank. It's a unit tank. It can do multiple things, but we use it for carbonation. There is a hose right down here that goes to a carbonation stone, which essentially looks like a porous piece of metal, and it acts similar to how a bubbler in your fish tank works. It takes air and disperses it so that the entire amount of liquid gets carbon dioxide put onto it. So it'll sit in here for a day. We go by pressure and temperature. So we bring the tank down to about 39 degrees, and we get the pressure up about to 15 PSI. And then we know that we want X amount of volumes of CO2 in there. And that's the number that we came up with. We have some testing equipment here, and that lets us prove that we have the numbers that we want. There's a little bit of shaking involved and a little bit of manpower there. Once we're happy with the amount of carbonation that's in there, we'll take a hose and we'll hook it up and we'll put it to our canning line. So this is new for us. This is part of our expansion. So before there used to be a wall right here. There's no wall anymore. We've opened it up, and this is our canning line right behind me. And I'll come around and I'll do another walk around. And we've added another piece of equipment right over here, which is our Belker dosing machine. So from that tank, we'll run a hose to the bottom over here to this fella. And then the product comes out from over here. And then we'll run the hose to our canning line, which is right behind me. What this machine allows us to do is bypass pasteurization. So when we started canning, we needed to pasteurize. Without pasteurization, our cans would literally explode on the shelf. We don't filter to sterilization. We could, but we don't. So because we weren't doing that, we have to pasteurize. There's still yeast, viable yeast floating around. There's still a couple of cells floating around in there. And if they get a hold of any little bit of sugar, they're going to metabolize it and your can's going to blow up because of fermentation. We also in the cider world have what's called malolactic fermentation. That is also taken care of with pasteurization. This machine right behind me takes care of that. It doses a chemical into the cider, and it becomes CO2. It turns into something completely different. And it's essentially an enzyme that stops fermentation. It just does not allow fermentation to happen. So with this, we no longer have to worry about pasteurizing, which used to take 8 hours to do, 250 gallons. Once it goes through here, it goes into our canning line and it goes into the cans, and that's it. It's ready to rock and roll. No more waiting around. This new canning line that we have, you can see it behind me. So I'm standing on the front of it. This thing right behind me here is called a De-Palletizer. So our cans, I think you can see them up there, essentially 5 feet tall, and these are cans as well. They get rolled into the De-Palletizer. I'll open the door so you guys can see it. So that's the De-Palletizer. It's an elevator essentially. So the elevator comes down to the ground, raises the cans up the top. There's a push arm way up top here, and it pushes the cans in. And there's a conveyor here. It conveys the cans all the way down. They come down this twist rinser, and everyone always wants to know why the twist rinser twists. I don't really know. And then it gets injected with ionized air. The ionized air just cleans out the cans. If there's any dust particles, anything like that, it blasts them out. Comes down over here. It's an 8-head filling machine. Fills it with cider. The cans come down the line over here. And this mechanism drops lids down. And as the cans come by, it skims it and it just drops the lid right on the can. Passes through and it goes into the seamer. Cans come into this little rolling indexer here. They get pushed up from the bottom, and there's a motor right here that spins the can around, and these two rollers move and touch the lid and seam the lid. They come down onto our labeler. Our labeler applies the labels, and then we usually have 2 guys over here collecting the cans and putting them in the trays, and then another guy over here putting the Pactex on, the little holders on there. So this is completely new to us. This is about August we added this. When we first started doing our canning, it was taking us about 5 minutes to do 24 cans. With this machine, we can do 38 cans every minute. So it's a fairly stark contrast to what we were doing before. What used to take us 8 hours to package and can up now takes an hour and a half. With setup and breakdown and cleaning and everything like that, it's like 2.5 hours. And that's having a completely packaged product that's ready to go and ready to ship. So it's been a crazy ride getting all this equipment in here. with COVID and all that kind of stuff happening. All these machines were supposed to be here early May. The last one, the Velcro dosing machine, that's this guy over here, the one that does the stabilizer. That was the same thing. It was supposed to be here in May or June. We only got it set up and in place and commissioned and turned on last week. So we've kind of been it's just been stressful. It's been crazy. It's been crazy. It's been crazy waiting and waiting and waiting for stuff. We were supposed to have tanks here, which is part of my expansion as well. I'm waiting for 6 tanks to show up. Again, they were supposed to be here in May. I think they just landed in New York on Monday, but I couldn't tell you because no one's told me yet. So still waiting on those things. For the little unit that was making all that noise before, that's this little gentleman right here. That's my Glycol Chiller. And that's what stabilizes the temperatures in my tank. It's fairly small. It's undersized for what I have now, but we make it work. I have a new unit here that's been sitting here since July that I can't put in place until my tanks show up. And I think it's 13 times the size of this thing in cooling capacity, but I can't use it because I don't have tanks. And I can't rip all this stuff out and put that in without everything else. So it's been crazy. This COVID thing has been just nuts, but we're pushing forward. We keep pushing product out. We keep making folks like you guys happy, and that's what really matters. So everyone keeps asking for it. So it just keeps us hopeful here. But we're almost there. We're almost there. And we also have a new heating unit. I told you guys at the beginning of the shop tour that it takes us about 4 days to warm up the cider. I have a heating unit that's similar to the chilling unit, and you hook it up to the tanks, same thing, and it warms it up. It'll warm it up in 24 hours. So I'm going to be cutting my production time down by 4 days so I can turn batches around quicker. So currently, even at this mismatched pace or setup that we have, we're putting out about 50,000 gallons of a finished product a year, or we're purchasing about 50,000 gallons of juice a year. By the time the expansion is done, which I thought it would have been done by now, but within the year or so, we should be increasing productions to 100,000. And then within the next 2 years or 3 years, we should be up to 200,000 gallons of cider a year. So that was the intent of this whole project, was to ramp up the production to that. I also plan on taking co-packers. So we're going to be making cider. We actually currently do make a cider for someone in the state right now. So we've already started that project. I'm looking to take on maybe 1 or 2 more clients to co-pack for. So that's where we're at right now in the production stage of things.
I have a couple questions in the
Sure.
chat. Are you going to make more chocolates?
Yeah, we usually do them for Valentine's Day, but people do like them, so we may do them a little bit more frequently. We did have an issue with the woman that was making the chocolates for us. She had some kind of problem with a name that she was using, so she had stopped doing it for a little bit. So, but yeah, we do plan on doing that again. Yep, those are really popular.
And what is the shelf life for your ciders?
I tell people drink it right away, drink it ASAP. I've had ciders sitting around literally for a year in the can, like stuff that we canned last year, and I popped it open and drank it, and it was fine. It was pasteurized, so it was no problem. It should be the same scenario with the Velcro. It should be shelf stable for months, easily 2-3 months. And then if you keep it in the refrigerator, ever, I guess, but I guess you want to drink it. I would always recommend just drinking it right away, drink it fresh. It's not really meant to be aged. We don't put a cider out that's meant to be aged. None of this fruited stuff is really meant for that. It's kind of like an IPA when you think of it in that respect. It's a fresh product. It's meant to be consumed as soon as possible. Some of our other ciders that we don't add any sugar to or any juice to, because we don't add table sugar. There's only one cider that I may be making really soon. Actually, it's gonna be a small batch, our roasted maple. That's the only one that we add any other kind of sugar to. We add maple sugar to it. Other than that, it's all just juice, just apple juice. So the dry stuff that we used to make, bottled, canned, whatever, I mean, you can sit on it for years. You can sit on it for years if you wanted to, and it's probably fine. I had stuff in my basement that COVID, I was bored, from 2013 that I was opening and drinking, and it was phenomenal. But again, not back sweetened, meant to be aged, meant to be sitting in your cellar and kind of appreciated after a long period of time like that.
Any plans to increase seating capacity in the tasting room?
Yeah. So again, best made plans don't always go the way you want them to. That was supposed to be happening this winter. I was banking on all the tanks and all production to be in full swing in September already. But that's the way it goes. So we're pushing, realistically, I'm pushing the taste room expansion probably till next year. I probably won't break ground in the taste room until next year. And just so you guys have an idea what we're doing, I guess you can kind of see our taste room is right here. That's where it ends. That's about 300 square feet in that room over there. So it's that like loft area. Above this loft area is my taste room. So we're just gonna break this wall down, and the loft is gonna go away. The ceiling is gonna get blown out, and then we're gonna expand the taste room to right about here.
Oh, wow.
So it's about 1,000 square feet. So three times the size, just about. And looking to put an addition on the building on the outside for restrooms. But it's a fairly large project, and I just don't have the means for it right now. So right now we're just focusing on doing the manufacturing side of things and really just saturating the state, and then looking to push out into other states, into other markets.
Awesome. How much juice do you use to back sweeten the fermented product?
We're using we do about a 70-30 split. 70 cider, 30 juice on most batches. Anyone else?
That's all the questions I see. If anybody wants to unmute or ask questions in the chat, now's your chance.
Feel free.
Well,
Cool.
but thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys for joining me.
Hopefully next time we do this, we can be
Everything.
together in person.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a lot of fun. I'd love to have you guys all here. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed everything. Hope the ciders were good. Come down and visit us. Love to have you.
All right. Thanks so much. Everyone have a good night.
Take care. Have a good one.
Bye.